Tonight on PhillyCAM Voices, more fallout from the pandemic, the struggle of paying rent or mortgage in the face of high unemployment. Local music venues are being thrown a lifeline during the pandemic, thanks to the National Independent Venue Association. And it's almost been a year since a massive explosion rocked the Philadelphia Energy Solutions refinery. We hear from the filmmaker who made a movie about the disaster. Good evening, and thank you for tuning in to PhillyCAM Voices. I'm your host, Amanda Johnson. The pandemic has left hundreds of thousands of employees unemployed and struggling to make ends meet. So, as you can imagine, paying rent or mortgage is a challenge at this time. Shivani Reddy talked with housing expert Beth McConnell about the crisis in Philadelphia.
Welcome to PhillyCAM Voices. I'm your host, Shivani Reddy. I'm here with Beth McConnell from the Philadelphia Association of Community Development Corporations. Hi, Beth. It's great to have you here with us today.
Hey, Shivani. It's great to be with you.
So I'd just like to begin by having you introduce yourself and, letting our viewers know what you do and what kinds of work you do in regards of affordable housing.
Sure. So I'm the policy director at the Philadelphia Association of Community Development Corporations. We go by PACDC for short. And we're a membership association that works with nonprofit community development corporations and other organizations that care about building an equitable city and revitalizing our neighborhoods in an equitable way. And so that includes doing a lot of advocacy around affordable housing. And our members also build and preserve and repair affordable homes for people who are facing homelessness or other people who are lower income and need some help and assistance in finding affordable quality homes across the city.
That's amazing. So your organization, you guys recently came out with a press release about, the support for city council proposing to use revenue from the construction impact tax. So I just wanted to touch on a couple of points. Has there been any recent assistance to help people pay, their rent and mortgages, especially to the offset loss of COVID?
There has. So the good news is that there's been tens of millions of dollars that have flown to Philadelphia renters and homeowners as a result of legislation passed in Congress back in the spring called the CARES Act. And so that money's been used to help renters and their landlords. Some of the money goes through the landlords to pay a portion of their rent for a couple of months. And some of it has also gone to homeowners that could be facing foreclosure to help them meet their mortgage payments so that they don't lose their homes as well. The bad news is if you haven't already applied, unfortunately, you're too late. All the application deadlines for these programs have passed. And unfortunately, the bad news also is there's not enough money for everybody that needs help and everybody that applies. So not everybody will get resources. But it has been very helpful and has made a big difference for some people, but we need to go further and Congress needs to do more.
And has there been any assistance for landlords, especially if their tenants aren't paying as a way to prevent eviction?
Yeah, some of the programs require that the tenant and the landlord apply together, and the money actually goes to the landlord to pay the rent on behalf of the tenant. Some of the programs are able to give tenants some assistance directly. It really depends on where the money's coming from and how the programs were designed. But that was a key component of many of the rental programs is working directly with the landlords. Mm-hmm. Some landlords have also been offered, and I don't know how many have taken advantage of it, some low interest loans and other programs to help them get through the tough times. The city's office of the Philadelphia Housing Development Corporation, which is one of the city offices that does a big chunk of the housing work, has been trying to, make a bunch of options available for tenants and landlords to get through these tough times.
Okay. And, would you be willing to project into the future for us and kind of tell us what you think the repercussions would be down the road in regards to the way the pandemic has affected us and will continue to affect housing issues in Philadelphia?
Yeah, I'm going to start with the bad news first and then end with what I think is the good news.
Mhm.
The bad news is that, as I said earlier, the rental assistance programs that have been out there aren't enough, right? We, as a city with nearly 1.6 million people, with a poverty rate nearly 24%, facing the greatest economic crisis that we've seen in generations, the resources that have come here for rental assistance have not been able to serve all of the people that need it. Some people probably didn't even know about it. So while there have been moratoriums on eviction for much of the last couple months since COVID, those moratoriums are going to expire, most of them by the end of December. And so folks who have not been able to keep up on their rent and have not been able to get assistance are going to find huge bills coming due, and they don't have the resources to pay them. And their landlords are going to be taking them to court and evicting them. So without more resources, we could see an eviction crisis and a homelessness crisis unlike anything that we have seen in Philadelphia. So severe, but happening all at one time, right? In previous economic crises, it hasn't just been all of a sudden in 1 month, everybody becomes out of work and housing unstable. There's usually been a kind of a gradual, dangerous and terrible, but more of a gradual approach. With COVID, obviously things are very different. So that's really terrifying. The good news, though, and with that, is that Philadelphia created something called the Eviction Diversion Program. After talking about it for years and years and years, COVID was the thing that finally lit the fire to get it done. And that's a great program that anybody who's facing eviction that qualifies under the kind of income guidelines could seek assistance from an attorney, a legal services attorney, to negotiate and mediate with their landlord to see if they could come up with a solution to avoid eviction. So folks can pursue that program, and that's going to stay around post-COVID. So I think that's the bright side. The other bright side is I do think that Congress will probably pass another stimulus bill. We don't know when, and we don't know how big it will be, and we don't know what all the dollars will go for. But there's very strong support for sending additional dollars to housing to prevent the kind of homelessness and eviction and foreclosure crisis that we're facing, and that could be very devastating. So I'm confident that those resources will come, but I'm not confident that they'll come fast enough. Mm-hmm. And that's really something I think everybody listening and watching today, make sure you call your senators and your congressperson and tell them to push hard to get those housing resources available.
Of course. So in regards to the press release, what policy is in the works with City Council regarding the construction impact tax, which is being used to push towards like commercial corridors and affordable homes?
Yeah, I want to say, first of all, how amazing and incredible it's been. All the activism in Philadelphia that's been directed towards City Council to push them to take housing more seriously has led to a lot of victories in the last few years and has led to Council really acting and leading. Many different members of Council and the administration, Kennedy administrations, has also been responsive to addressing some of these issues. And that's led us to a proposal to do a $400 million bond. And the construction impact tax would basically be the tax that would pay the debt service on the bond. So, if you float a bond, you need to pay it back. So you need to have the money for that. And that's what they're proposing to do with this 1% construction impact tax. That $400 million bond, if the construction impact tax is passed and the $400 million bond is floated, that's money that could go to build new affordable homes. It's money that could go to repair existing affordable homes, whether it's an owner-occupied home that needs a new roof or plumbing in order to stay habitable, or it's rental housing that's affordable that really needs major improvement so that it's healthy and safe and stays affordable and doesn't get flipped into a market rate unit. Those are all resources that we could use those bond dollars for, and it would be just to compare, it would be a significant increase in funding for affordable homes at the local level here in Philadelphia compared to what we typically are able to spend in a given year. But it won't solve the problem. Even $400 million won't solve the problem. Mm-hmm. But it could lead to economic recovery and jobs while creating affordable homes, creating and preserving affordable homes that people need.
Beth, is there anything else you wanted to maybe add on, if people have been experiencing homelessness prior to the pandemic or due to the pandemic, what is it they can do?
Yeah, that's such an important question. We had a housing affordability crisis before the pandemic. We had a growing homelessness population, largely exacerbated by the opioid epidemic before the pandemic. And so the pandemic obviously just makes everything harder because it creates a whole new universe of people who are struggling that weren't struggling before. And unfortunately, a lot of the assistance that has come from the federal government has been earmarked specifically for people who are struggling because of COVID. So there are some people who have struggled with homelessness for a long time that aren't getting access to some of those benefits, and that's a real struggle. So the first thing I would do is make sure that, again, when you're contacting your members of Congress or city council, to speak up for the people who were struggling already before and are hurt even more now, and making sure that they get access to those resources. The other thing that folks can do if they're facing homelessness is to make sure that you're in touch with the city's Office of Homeless Services. Unfortunately, they just, even before the pandemic and still today, don't have all the resources that they need to serve everyone that needs it. But they need to hear from you, even if they can't help you. We need to know that you're out there, so that us as advocates and others can be pounding down the doors for our elected officials, saying you're not serving the people who are needed, that the waiting lists are too long, the lines for assistance are too long, and we're not serving people. So I think it's important that you give them a call, and you can go to their website at philadelphiaofficeofhomelessservices.org to reach out. But I would also recommend that Save Your Home Philly hotline is a great place to go, because they can send you in all the different directions, all the different agencies that could be available to help.
And is there anything else you would like our viewers to know?
Just a reminder, if you're facing eviction, you may qualify for the eviction diversion program, and you can go to phlevictiondiversion.org to learn more.
Thank you, Beth, so much for being with us today and continuing to work towards affordable housing for people here in Philadelphia.
Thank you so much. It's been great to be with you.
Of course.
For the full interview, visit our YouTube page, PhillyCAM. And for PhillyCAM Voices, this is Shivani Reddy.
Entertainment has come to a screeching halt due to the pandemic. Theaters and playhouses have been shut down for safety. But as Toya Haynes reports, one organization is throwing music venues a lifeline.
Music venues and theaters have been amongst the hardest hit during the pandemic. Because of mandates prohibiting public gatherings, music venues have been forced to shut their doors, some of them for good. NEVA, the National Independent Venue Association, has been hard at work in helping venues all around the country survive during COVID-19. We spoke with NEVA co-founder and owner of Philadelphia's World Cafe Live, Hal Leach, about NEVA's mission and how it was quickly formed to combat this widespread crisis.
And we said, okay, this summer, after Independent Venue Week is behind you, we'll invite a couple dozen people to Philly to be a steering committee. And hopefully, a dozen or more will show up, and we'll all brainstorm about how we can put together some sort of a coalition or a trade association for independent venues. That was February 25th, I believe. 3 weeks later, we all shut down for COVID. Wow. And a week after that, what was going to be a summertime fun little steering committee meeting in Philly to talk about what to do, there were about 20 of us on a conference call. It wasn't a Zoom. It was a good old-fashioned conference call in March. Zoom wasn't in our vocabulary, believe it or not. And we all said, holy shit, we got to do something right now.
Yeah.
And so that was the beginning of NEVA. And of course, what I had envisioned was, working on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and working on buying insurance together, and working on how we can do things for our staff together. I never envisioned what we're going to have to do is lobby Congress to save our butts. But very quickly, we realized that we were all shut down and we didn't have a collective voice, and we either had to stand up or we were going to be shut down for a long time.
It was then that NEVA quickly sprung into action to lobby for emergency relief for music venues by engaging members of Congress around the country.
We want you to know independent venues are a really important sector in your state. There's this many of them. It's this kind of economic impact. There's this many employees, and we are shut down, and we need your attention. And then the PPP Act was passed, and we said, that's great for businesses that can be partly open, but we're not going to hire people back for jobs that don't exist. This is stupid. We need real help. We need help paying rent. We need help paying insurance. We've still got all these costs. And so a couple of senators sponsored the what was called the Restart Act.
Okay.
And we got behind the Restart Act. And the Restart Act was better for the PPP, better for us than PPP. More money could be used for more things and more forgiveness. It wasn't perfect, but our lobbyists said, you're too small to have your own bill. Just get behind the Restart Act and help, get more support from both sides of the aisle in both the House and the Senate. And that's your best bet, and try and influence the things that are in there.
It was then that two senators, one Republican and one Democrat, came together to lend NEVA a hand in developing the bipartisan Save Our Stages Act bill.
We got a phone call. We got a phone call from very Republican, conservative Senator Cornyn from Texas.
Wow.
Texas has a lot of live music, from square dances to rock and roll to soul to everything in between.
Yeah.
And Senator Cornyn said, listen, I get it, and I want to start an act for Save Our Stages. I want to write an act just for your industry. So we went back to her, and he said, and by the way, Amy Klobuchar I'll be the lead co-sponsor for the Republicans. She'll be the lead for the Democrats. I've already talked to her. What do you guys think of this? So we called our lobbying firm and said, well, you told us not to do this. But we just got this call from a senator saying he wants to do a Save Our Stages Act. And the lobbyist said, oh, well, yeah, when a US senator calls you and tells you they want to write a piece of legislation for you, then you say, thank you very much, ma'am and sir. How can we be? So that's what gave birth to the Save Our Stages Act.
While it has been uplifting to witness politicians from around the country see the value in preserving local live music, in Philadelphia, when it comes to the arts, many feel that there's much that remains to be seen. Earlier this year, Mayor Kenney received much backlash for his proposal to completely eliminate the city's arts and culture department by depleting its budget to zero.
Having to make a cut in that department and all these other departments, we all could get. But the message you send when you say, no, we're cutting it out to zero, is the arts just don't matter.
Yeah.
And anybody who's got a heart, and most people who've got a brain know the arts really matter. So let's start with the heart and the spirit. What are we without the arts?
In mid-October, NEVA joined with YouTube for the Save Our Stages Fest, which raised nearly $2 million for indie concert venues. This 3-day virtual music festival included performances by Alicia Keys, Miley Cyrus, John Legend, Foo Fighters, Cautious Clay, The Roots, and many more.
We partnered with Google and YouTube to do the Save Our Stages Festival. It was 3 days. It was the largest virtual festival that's been done to date. We've raised about $3 million all told from that. And that's terrific. We have a grant program so that the most needy of our 3,000 members applied for grants. They'll be $25,000 each. We're thrilled that we'll be able to do those. But I got to tell you, even if we raised $10 million, which is our goal ultimately, that only is going to help 400 venues with $25,000 each.
Yeah.
It's better than nothing, and we're working our butts off, and we're very proud of it. But this is something that needs government help.
For the Save Our Stages virtual concert, YouTube picked 25 iconic venues around the country, including Philly's World Cafe Live and Harlem's legendary Apollo Theater.
In closing, what is it that you would want people to know about NEVA? How can people help? What needs to be done by the general public? How can we help NEVA?
The best thing people can do right now is go to saveourstages.com, and there's a very easy way for you to reach out to your Congress people and tell them passed the Save Our Stages Act. If you go to saveourstages.com and you'll see a big green thing that says, contact your legislator. I mean, it's so amazing. You put your zip code in and it gives you the letter to use, the form to send, and you just push the button and off it goes to your senators and to your reps. And if you do the same for your state, a little more work, but if you do the same with your state reps and your state senators, we'd be thrilled. That's the most important thing you can do. And if you want to donate money, you can go to worldcafelive.com to donate to the venue or whatever your favorite venue is. I mean, South, and everybody's got their own, fundraiser going on. Or you can go to the NEVA site, NEVA, NIVASSOC.org, and you can hit the donate button there to give to the umbrella organization for our emergency relief fund.
I'm Toya Haynes for PhillyCAM Voices.
In June 2019, a massive explosion rocked the Philadelphia Energy Solution oil refinery in South Philadelphia. The community around the refinery is still recovering. Bettina Escariza spoke with filmmaker Bilal Motley, who made a movie about the disaster.
Hey, Bilal, it's great to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining us. So just so everybody knows, Bilal Motley is a local filmmaker here in Philadelphia, and his film Midnight Oil premiered at the Black Star Film Festival and has since played internationally. So Bilal, can you go ahead and introduce yourself to us? Tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from.
Yes, thanks for having me, Bettina. Yes, my name is Bilal Motley, writer-director of Midnight Oil. Born in Mississippi, grew up all over the country, settled in my dad's hometown, Chester, Pennsylvania, which is about 13 miles south of Philadelphia, where I worked at the refinery for nearly 15 years. So, yeah, working in film, started as a screenwriter. That's how I met Bettina, and then ultimately led to this film.
Could you tell me a little bit more about the film? So the film's called Midnight Oil. Tell me what it's about, and then talk to me about what inspired you to make it.
Yeah, in 2019, a giant explosion happened like 4 a.m. I was working at the refinery where we process crude oil and make it into gasoline and other products. And I was working here. It was another, night shift I got through, and heard a giant explosion. And we all could have died. All of South Philadelphia could have been devastated with hydrofluoric acid if it was real, if it wasn't contained the way it was. So, my friends lost their jobs. We were all depressed, and I had to do something. I talked to my brother one day, and he said, he said, "How you feeling?" I said, "I'm not good." And he said, "Why aren't you filming this?" I said, "You're right." So that's when I started doing it. And then that's when I reached out to you, talking to you really helped set the tone. You gave me organization. You gave me confidence. Like, you always believed in me. And that really meant a lot. So those initial meetings with you kind of got me focused. And so I made the film and just, I kind of learned on my way. Like, for years, I spent years begging, let's say, major organizations, screenwriting fellowship, to allow me to make a film. And you always told me, just do it. So I got tired. I was nearly 40, and I was like, I'm just gonna do it. I'm tired of begging for permission from people who don't understand me or where I come from. So I just started doing it, figured out how to frame. I figured out how to interview people and so I just kind of just figured it out and just did it.
This is the formerly Sunoco Refinery, now PES Refinery, Philadelphia Energy Solutions in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Wow, look at this place. I never imagined, how did I end up here? I'm not good with my hands. Always wanted to be an artist. But now I'm here after 15 years.
Started when I came here. They were working on uniforms and putting our name badges. They said, "What is your name?" I said, "BL." My name is Bilal. But that first day in 2006 when I started, that was the first day I compromised who I am. I was making myself smaller, less ethnic. My name is Bilal Islam Motley. It's not BL. But I didn't want to make anyone uncomfortable with my name, so I put BL on there so they could pronounce it and make it easy, so I can assimilate, make myself small. But that's not who I am. That was the first day of compromising myself.
This documentary film that you ended up making, which I find to be incredibly important, deals a lot in a very like forward way, like without cowering away from it. It deals with this important, like this tension that's happening, that has been happening here in Philadelphia between the refinery, right? And what happens in the refinery in terms of the pollution that it causes, right? And then the neighborhood that surrounds it. And I found it just really revealing and amazing that you decided to feature your experiences, right, as a refinery worker and the experiences of your coworkers. And also that you spoke to people in the neighborhood, right? And that you spoke to activists. And it's a very personal film. And I wanted to hear more from you about just about that duality, that experience, that to me, it feels like a binary, right? Between your experience as a worker in this refinery and your co-workers, people that you've worked with for 15 years. And then the relationship that you built with the people in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good observation. Yeah, working there, it was like a double consciousness, and it's, all people of color know this in this country. I was there just fitting in, just trying to like, okay, like that's why I use my name when I talked about, I use BL instead of my full name, Bilal Islam Motley. But on my name patch, I had BL. I wasn't really myself there, but I found a way to fit in and not be like the angry black men that they didn't like there. So I figured out a way to be likable there, but also harboring all these feelings that I kept to myself about. I was learning more about the environment, it wasn't until after the explosion I took an effort to meet the people in the community, and they looked just like the people where I grew up in Chester, Pennsylvania, mostly African American, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. And part of me, I'm very self-aware that, I didn't do anything. I knew it was wrong. I knew working there, it wasn't completely good, but, I was going on my vacations, going around the world, doing whatever I wanted to do, earning a living, and I did nothing about it. So I'm aware, I guess I'm being hard on myself. It was convenient for me, like, okay, the place is closing down. Oh, let me start looking into these things that I always felt. So I guess it's me just being hard on myself. But yeah, just learning more about the community and the backlash I received, because I finally was allowed to be myself, say how I felt about what we do at the refinery. And I lost a lot of supposed friends, like maybe like 1,000 people. We know everybody in there. And that was difficult. The woke part of me wishes, I don't care about them, but it does hurt. I'm a sensitive, that, but I'm a sensitive person. So, but yeah, it was a heck of an experience. The year, this past June was the year anniversary of explosion. I just wanted to hide. I didn't want anybody to talk to anybody. People were reaching out to me, but it is still kind of painful. And I do feel from some of my friends that are, that had to leave, go around the country and the world, lost their jobs. But I'm glad I did what I did. I did it for my son, who wasn't born yet. He's 1 now, and my daughter, who's 9. To say something that, number one, that I was here and Daddy made something. He finally got brave and did something. And number 2, when they start to deal with this existential crisis of climate change, which they're gonna really be the ones dealing with it. They can know what their daddy thought, because I lost my mom when I was 6. So I always wonder, what does she think about this? I wish she was here. And so I just like a document to them, and after anything other than that, I couldn't control. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's incredibly powerful, and I think that's what makes the film powerful, right? I look forward to it being out there, and I'm really glad that it's in the festival circuit now. And I'm happy that you came to the studio today to talk to us about your film and your work as an artist. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for tuning.
Well, that's all we have for this episode of PhillyCAM Voices. Thank you for joining us. You can also watch our show on YouTube and Roku, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We will see you next time. But to watch the full interview with Beth McConnell, please check out our PhillyCAM Voices playlist on YouTube.